1-point game, half a minute to play. Lakers and Russ into the front court. Russell pull up. Oh. No, Russ, no, he missed it.
The biggest storyline for the Lakers this offseason was, what do they do with Russell Westbrook? The front office has tried numerous times to trade him, but other teams are not biting. In his first season in LA, his value rapidly tanked. In a very short time, Westbrook went from one of the league's most coveted stars to a complete joke of a player. Even after an offseason where he promised to get better and he'd promised to change, yet nothing has changed. It was all bark and no bite. And with LeBron's time in the league running short, this is not how he wants to finish out his career, with a player that does way more harm than good. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and in this video, let's take a look at Westbrook's continued struggles. But later on, I want to take a look at other players who are also problematic for their own teams. Their respective teams are basically on the last straw with them, and something needs to change for all these guys. But before we start, this video is sponsored by Established Titles. What is it? It's a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lords and ladies. They allow anyone to purchase land, and with every purchase, they plant a tree. When you buy a title pack, you'll get at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, along with an official certificate with your own unique plot number, so you'll know the exact location of your land. If you want, you could officially change your name to Lord or Lady and have that title on your credit cards or plane tickets or whatever. Established Titles also told me that the first 200 people to purchase a title pack, your land will essentially be right next to mine. This project is a cool way to become a landowner, while also making the world a better place by supporting global reforestation efforts. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is actually running a massive sale right now. Plus, if you use the code ANDYHOOPS, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/ANDYHOOPS to get your gifts now and help support the channel. So it seems like the biggest detriment of Westbrook's current playstyle is his lack of awareness and shot selection. A big surprise there. People have criticized his shot selection all the time, even when he was younger, but it's gotten so much worse in LA, and here's why. If you take a look at the 2021-22 season and look at where he took his shots and compare it to his MVP season, you'd see one stark difference. The number of attempts between 3 and 10 feet is more than triple what he used to take, but it also happens to be his worst area by far. Over a fifth of his shots come from there now, but for his career, he shoots just 34% from that distance. Out of all spots on the court below the three-point arc, that's his worst spot. It's also the spot where most defenders are letting him shoot at, which I guess we know why now. The season is young, but Mark Spears tweeted out a shocking piece of trivia the other day. Russell Westbrook has shot 4 for 26 in his last 2 games. That is tied for the worst field goal percentage over any 2-game span by a Lakers player in the last 50 years. Westbrook tied himself from earlier this year in January. It's not just his piss-poor shooting that's getting annoying either, it's also the fact that he's completely unaware of how bad he is. For example, when he shot 0 for 11 from the field in the second game of the season, a reporter asked him how he thought of his own performance. Westbrook responded, solid. Played hard, that's all you can ask for. Granted, he did hustle a lot on defense, recording 5 steals and even successfully defended Kawhi Leonard on a few possessions. But anytime you go 0 for 11, that's not a good game. He's completely oblivious to his own shortcomings, and it honestly seems like nothing has changed. It's getting comical at this point. In the last game of the preseason, Lakers coach Darvin Ham made the decision to bring Westbrook off the bench. It was actually the first time he came off the bench since his rookie season, and man, he was not too happy about it. Westbrook legitimately believed he strained his hamstring, specifically because he came off the bench because it threw off his rhythm, as he's a very routine-oriented person. I can't even tell if he's being sarcastic, but knowing Westbrook, he truly believes everything he says is correct. Not sure there's much hope left for him to change. Draymond Green. Don't you think it's weird that back in 2018, the team suspended him for having an argument with Kevin Durant? But this time, he threw a freaking haymaker at Jordan Poole, and he just got hit with a small fine and not even a suspension. plus that incident was so sketchy the whole way through. The Warriors seemed more concerned that the footage leaked to the public, as opposed to the fact that the person who threw the punch should be punished. Now, on the court, Dre is still a decent player, I guess, but he's nowhere near as productive as he used to be. Defensively, he's fallen a step back, and offensively, he sometimes looks non-existent, as the Warriors prefer other players to take more shots instead. Apparently, the cause of that recent conflict had to do with contract negotiations. Both Poole and Green are up for extensions, but it was Poole who got it. A 4-year, $140 million extension, which was well-deserved after a breakout year. For Draymond, he's been on the team for much longer, but he feels gypped. The extension talks with the front office reached a stalemate, and ultimately, he has to play this year out without a new extension. The Warriors want him to show he can still play like the Draymond of old, so it makes sense they're hesitant on keeping him. The last few years also showed that he's kind of useless if he's not surrounded by stars. In the 2019-20 season, both Steph and Klay were injured. He was absolutely atrocious, and it was that moment when everyone realized Green is a product of the system. He does elevate an already great team even further, but also benefits a lot from playing with the two best shooters in the league. But if he was drafted to any other team, he would be a complete non-factor. Nobody would even care about him. Heck, with all his antics, Green racked up over $1 million in fines throughout his career, the highest in NBA history by far. There's no way he'd get away with that if he was on any other team, honestly. They wouldn't have such a long leash with him. So this 2022-23 season is a make-or-break year for Draymond. While he's already a well-accomplished player, it's time for him to prove himself once again, to prove to the organization he still deserves a spot on this roster for years to come. Dillon Brooks. This might seem like a random addition to this list, but Brooks is one of just a few players in the league who's part of a contending roster, yet has the most negative production of any player in the second round of last year's playoffs. Disregarding the flagrant foul on Payton, which it looked bad, but I feel like he got a ton of unnecessary flack as well. It was his on-court production that really crippled the Grizzlies. For the past 2 years, he's registered a true shooting percentage of just 51.5%. That's just horrendous efficiency, roughly 5% below the league average for small forwards. Shockingly, he was even worse in the playoffs. Not just that, but he takes the second most shot attempts on his team, behind Ja Morant. His usage rate is also second on his team. Same way in the playoffs too, it's just ridiculous how many shots he's taking. He's also near the bottom in other crucial metrics. Out of all players who attempt at least 15 shots a game, he has the lowest win shares per 48 minutes, and the lowest box plus-minus across the last 2 seasons. There's not a single stat that shows Brooks is a net benefit for his team. Even his defense, which has been praised for most of his career, even that doesn't make up for his putrid offense. Now, I know Brooks is still relatively young and still has room to grow, but he's been playing like this for a while, and it's seriously holding the Grizzlies back from their full potential. Just having him use so many possessions is hurting the team. Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, and probably even Tyus Jones, they should all be taking more shots than Brooks. Granted, Brooks is also recovering from a thigh injury, and his contract expires in 2023. I can't imagine the Grizzlies re-signing him, unless he miraculously becomes an offensive dynamo when he recovers. I just can't see him being part of the team's future. Or at least just change up his game and take fewer shots, and focus on defense and his three-point shooting. Brooks needs to find a new niche, as his current place on the team is not working out. Ben Simmons. After sitting out an entire year, Simmons came back and in his first regular season game, he exploded for 4 points and 6 fouls. I don't think anyone had a bigger chip on their shoulder than Ben Simmons in his return. Everyone's watching, closely examining how he plays when he returned. But so far, I don't see it. I don't see the motivation. I don't see any changes in this game. I don't see how the Nets will even keep him past the trade deadline. If he's performing even worse than before he started sitting out with an injury that might have been fake, what are they supposed to do? They traded away James Harden for this guy, so they gotta get his value's worth somehow. It doesn't help that Simmons also has a 15% trade kicker in his contract, meaning if he does get traded, his new team will have to bear the burden of that extra money. With that being said, Simmons is still a naturally gifted player. In his return, we still see those flashes of brilliance that once made us think he could be a future superstar. You can't teach his court vision and his instincts to find the right player at the right time, or his great handles for a guy as big as he is. But the weaknesses of his game were also the exact same weaknesses he had in his rookie season. His offensive repertoire is limited, and his shooting capabilities are still just as bad as it was when he first stepped into the NBA. Plus, it's also been reportedly said that Simmons is naturally a right-handed person, and that for most of his life, he was right-handed. But his father forced him to switch to his left hand. He was actually asked about this in an interview, and even he admitted, "I think I was supposed to be right-handed, but now that I'm using my left, it's all natural now." But is it all natural? From the looks of it, his left-handed shot attempts look anything but natural. However, if you look at his right-handed shots, they look so much more natural. I mean, he's shooting like a natural right-handed player, which he is. Perhaps he'll never develop a competent stroke if he tries to be something he's not. We've had this discussion for years now, and it doesn't look like it'll change. We know what Kyrie and KD are bringing to the table, but Simmons is still the wild card. The Nets' chances of winning a title banks on how Simmons comes back and reinvents himself, if he ever does. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were 4 NBA players who are problematic to their teams, in one way or another. And the fact that they're all playing for contenders, well, except for the Lakers maybe, we gotta pay attention to them. Their respective teams and franchises are on the edge of losing their minds. And that's what makes the NBA so exciting. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.